All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John McDougall with Murder by the Book, coming to you with another live virtual event. So excited for this week, as if you've been tuning in, you know that we chatted with Ellery Adams on Tuesday. Tonight, we're chatting with Olivia Blacke and Dorothy St. James, and then we've got another cozy event tomorrow with Angela N. Sanders and Valerie Wilson Wesley coming up. So we've got lots of really great stuff virtually for cozy readers this week. Last Saturday, we did an event with 5 Texas cozy writers, which you can find on the store's YouTube channel. I've created a special list that has all of our cozy author events and as well as some of the cozy staff recommendation videos that I've been doing. All on one playlist that you can find on the store's YouTube channel. And of course, all of the videos are also on Facebook as well, but it doesn't let us do cool playlists like YouTube does. So for those of you who are not familiar with Murder by the Book or me, as I said, my name is John McDougall and I am the event coordinator at the store. I am also our resident cozy reader. We have been in business, it'll be 41 years this coming August, specialized primarily in crime fiction. So we are open for business. We reopened on Halloween. So you're welcome to come visit us if you are just jonesing to get in and visit a bookstore. We are limiting it to 6 people in the store at a time, and of course, asking everybody to wear masks. So far, the 6-person limit has not been an issue. We just say if you pull up and you see that the parking lot is full, maybe just poke your head in and see where we're at capacity-wise, and we'll either let you in or ask you to wait just a minute. It's only happened maybe like once or twice since we've reopened, which is both a good and I guess bad thing. But we are also still doing curbside pickup. So if you are not comfortable getting out and about and you just want to pull up and pick up books, you can give us a call before you're heading our way. And of course, we're always available at murderbooks.com and we can ship all over the country. Also wanted to mention, if you guys are watching either on Facebook or YouTube tonight, we have had a recent rash of random spam messages pop up during events. I will be catching and blocking them as fast as I can. But if you see any links that pop up asking you to click on a link to register and input credit card information to watch the event, don't do that. It's a scam. The event is free. You're already watching it. You don't have to input your credit card info to watch something live on Facebook. So definitely avoid those. As I said, if any of them pop up, I will be blocking as fast as my little fingers will go. Wanted to mention real quick a couple other things we've got going on. As I mentioned, tomorrow night I'll be chatting with Angela N. Sanders and Valerie Wilson Wesley. Angela Sanders, her book, Bait and Witch, was our inaugural pick for our Cozy of the Month subscription box. So if you are a cozy reader and you would like to get a cozy mystery delivered to you once a month, you can sign up for that. I will drop links for that in the comments. They're generally first in series books or things that you can jump in without having had previous knowledge. We just started the program last month, and the February ones will be going out super soon. So we're really excited about that. Also wanted to mention on Tuesday, February 23rd, I will be chatting with Joanne Fluke. We're doing sort of a hybrid event. She's going to be here in Houston, so we'll be live streaming from the bookstore, but it won't be a public event where you can come meet her. She will be signing and personalizing books for us, though, so if you want to get one of those, you should get your orders in for those quick. I already mentioned the YouTube channel, so I think that is all of the general stuff that I wanted to mention before we bring out our authors. As I said tonight, we're really excited to have Dorothy St. James and Olivia Blacke with us to talk about their newest books. So I'm going to bring Dorothy out first. How are you tonight, Dorothy?
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So, guys, so her book, The Broken Spine, has just come out. If you are unfamiliar with Dorothy, she is a lover of puzzles and perhaps a bit too nosy about other people's lives. She is a former Folly Beach bum. She now lives in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina with her husband, precocious daughter, and slightly, terrible, needy dogs, and the friendliest cat you'd ever meet. Author of a dozen novels, Dorothy enjoys writing both cozy mysteries and romance. Her works have been nominated for many awards, including the Southern Independent Booksellers Alliance Southern Book Prize, Romantic Times Reviewer's Choice Award, the National Reader's Choice Award, and the Romance Reviews Today Perfect 10 Award. As I said, her new book and her new series is The Broken Spine, and it's been out a couple weeks now?
It's been out since January.
Time means nothing anymore.
No, it doesn't.
We're also excited to have Olivia Blacke with us this evening. How are you, Olivia?
Hi. Thanks, y'all, for having me.
Thanks for coming. So her newest book is Killer Content. This is your first, is that right?
This is my first. This is my debut novel. Came out in February.
Congratulations.
2nd. Thank you.
So Brooklyn Murder Mysteries Author Olivia Blacke writes quirky, unconventional, character-driven cozy mysteries. After shuffling around the USA from Hawaii to Maine, she currently resides with her husband and their roly-poly rescue puggle, but is forever homesick for New York City. In addition to writing, disappearing into a good book, and spending way too much time on social media, she enjoys scuba diving, crocheting, collecting tattoos, and baking dog cookies. And as we mentioned, her new book, Killer Content, has just come out. So we've got lots of great viewers already. I see lots of comments popping up. I'm going to mention while we are chatting, if you guys at home have any questions for either author, please post those in the comments, and we will definitely leave some time for audience Q&A when we get there. So just to start off, in case anybody is watching and they don't know what a cozy mystery is, Dorothy, do you want to tell everybody what a cozy mystery is for you?
Well, cozy mystery has an amateur sleuth that solves a mystery. So it could be someone who runs a bakery, or in my case, a librarian, and they kind of get sucked into solving a crime. And it's different than perhaps a regular mystery in that all violence takes place off the screen, and there's not any swearing or anything that might upset your grandma.
And how about you, Olivia? Do you have anything to add to that?
So one thing I always say whenever I'm describing cozy mysteries is a cozy is a book that you don't mind sharing with your mother-in-law. Because so many of the books that I like to read, I'm not sharing with my mom-in-law. She's fabulous. Not going to do it. So,
yeah. All right. So to get us started a little bit further, let's do elevator pitches or a little bit about new books. So, Dorothy, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about The Broken Spine?
Sure. My book, it features Trudell Beckett, and she's an assistant librarian in a small town in South Carolina. And the library where she works, the powers that be have decided to make it a bookless library, which means get rid of all the print books. And so she decides to take the books before they can destroy them or sell them, and hides them in the basement and opens up her own secret book room. But then she finds out that protecting the printed word can be murder.
All right. And Olivia, do you want to tell us a little bit about Killer Content?
So Killer Content, as it stars Odessa Dean. She's the main character. And a lot of cozy mysteries have a main character that moves from a large city into a small town and starts a new life. So I kind of had to flip that on its head. So Odessa moves from this little tiny city in Louisiana called Piney Island, and she moves to New York City, and she moves to Brooklyn in the neighborhood of Williamsburg, because Williamsburg is fun and it's trendy. And so she's definitely a fish out of water. She gets a job at a place called Untapped Books and Cafe, which is a cafe/bookstore. It's everybody's perfect dream. Like, I totally want to live in this place. And one of her coworkers gets murdered. And the murder is caught in the background of a viral video, because somebody was setting up a flash mob proposal video and catches a murder in the background. And Odessa gets sucked into the murder because everybody assumes it's an accident, and she can't handle it being an accident. And so she starts investigating, and the more she investigates, the more she realizes this really is a murder.
So that kind of is a great lead into my first question. So one of the things that's so important about cozy mysteries is location. As you said, it's usually kind of a little town. And with Olivia, for you, like, your book wouldn't necessarily, or the plot wouldn't necessarily work in a small town. And there's something about that kind of big city anonymity, and her being able to say, like, I didn't really know this person that died all that well, but I think something has happened. Like, it just wouldn't have worked in a small town. So can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges of trying to set your book in a bigger city, but still kind of have that cozy feel to it?
So that's one of the reasons that Williamsburg is perfect for a cozy, even though it's a big city. So you've got 150,000 residents, but it's a neighborhood, and it's got all of the neighborhood feel that you might have of a small town in Maine, or a South Carolina, a beautiful little library town. And some of the residents know each other, but there's enough people that if this series goes on for 100 books, it's not like I've killed off the entire population, which is kind of a challenge in the small towns, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Vivian Chen does that really well too. If you've read her Noodle House ones, like they're, she kind of uses that like the little strip center is kind of like the small town gossip mill. And then kind of on the flip side with you, Dorothy, like your book, you had to have that kind of sense of community for the book to work, to have, the main character really kind of love the library and want to take care of it for the residents. And it's kind of her connection to that community that makes it like necessary for her to want to save the library. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, although she loves libraries, she feels like it's really her calling to bring the books to the people, and she really felt like if the books were gone, you'd lose that experience of walking up and down the aisles and just kind of finding something you didn't know you needed. You can't really do that if you're online searching for something in particular. You don't get that magical feeling of, oh, this is the book I found. And she wanted to make sure to keep that for her residents. And I really wanted to explore and celebrate how small towns do come together and help each other. I really like that aspect of it. And with the pandemic, I just wanted to say, with the libraries that closed, I got to experience, a bookless library for myself. You could go pick up a book, but you couldn't go and just explore. And I really miss that.
Yeah, that was one of the challenges. So we closed to the public like the middle. I think our last event was March 13th last year, and then Houston's stay-at-home order was like the following week. So we were essentially closed for the public to just wander in from like March until the end of October. We'd started doing appointments so people could come in and browse by appointment, but it was really weird being in a bookstore and not being able to have like people come in and be able to pick things up and wander around. And like we could definitely help people over the phone or kind of waving through the window, but it wasn't the same as being able to have that conversation with somebody and being able to put something in their hands.
Exactly.
So I'm a debut author. This is my first book. I'm completely excited about it. And I can't walk into a bookstore and see it on a shelf. And I'm sure there are some ways to do it safely, but I'm very risk averse. So yeah, I'd love to see it on a shelf in a bookstore and a library. Yeah.
So that means any of you guys that are watching, if you are out and about and getting out in the world, if you are in a Barnes & Noble or an independent bookstore and you see a picture of Olivia's book somewhere, you need to take pictures of it and send it to her so she can vicariously live through you and see her books on shelves.
I've had a couple of friends do that, and it blows me away.
Yeah. And we felt so bad for the authors who had books come out like this time last year, because like if you couldn't get into the store, like those poor books they could find readers, but it wasn't as easy. So we're all so excited about the fact that like a lot of those things that came out during that kind of this early part of the pandemic are all now starting to come out in paperback. So that way we can kind of give them a second life and give those books kind of the shot that they missed out on in hardcover. One of the things I also wanted to talk about is technology, which isn't really something that we see kind of dealt with in cozy mysteries a lot. So Dorothy, with your book, your character, she's reeling from the fact that the bookstore is going to go bookless, but I thought you did a really good job of making her not be just like a technophobe. She wasn't doing it because she thought digital was bad. And I really like that the entire time they're talking about taking all of the books away, like her thought process was there's still room for both in this world. That there's room for the digital and there's room for the print. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you approached that?
Well, the more I talked to librarians, the more I learned how libraries are being asked to do more and more technological things. And I love technology, let me tell you. I love my phone. I love my computer. We have a 3D printer. We love just playing with that stuff. And our new library that just opened, now closed and opened and closed. They have the 3D printers and all the technology things too. And we're lucky that they had enough money to build a big enough building to accommodate both. And that was something I wanted to kind of explore and talk about in the book, was libraries are becoming more and more community centers and learning centers. They're not just about going and checking out books. So she had to understand, if any librarian would know that they're being asked to do more things, and understand that, yes, it's okay to bring in this new stuff, but let's just protect what we have already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What kind of research did you do into bookless libraries?
Well, there's not a lot of bookless libraries, thank goodness. As public libraries, school libraries are becoming more and more bookless. Universities, and even someone just told me an elementary school that their husband works at is going bookless, which I'm not sure about elementary schools. I think they need to hold books. And there's a place in Texas that went bookless. It was just a branch library, and it seemed to work out very well. There was one in Arizona a while ago that went bookless, and the people really didn't like it, and so they brought the books back. And then I talked to some emerging technologies librarians who really do work in both fields, and got their opinion of what's going on, just so I could write kind of knowledgeably about that push-pull that they feel. Because I love having tension in the characters, and she wants to serve the public and bring all of these services. So that was fun.
And so, on kind of the flip side for you, Olivia, like, technology plays such a big role in your book, especially like the murder. Like you said, the murder is they discover that this person has died because they're watching a viral video on social media and see her fall. Can you talk about how did you implement using technology in your book? And when you were writing it, were you aware of the fact that like technology and social media moves so quickly nowadays that potentially like it could be like we might not even be using Twitter like at some point in the future?
I actually did worry about that. And I talked a lot to my editor. Should we actually say the words Facebook or Twitter or Instagram? Because not only do they change, but they change how we call them. If I'm calling it Insta today, somebody's calling it IG yesterday. And so we had to strike a balance between using what we know and what exists right now, and using things like YouTube. And we mentioned even a couple of shows that are popular right now, Great British Bake Off, which I always get the name wrong, but I love the show. I don't know how I always mangle the name. And so, yes, everything is changing, and everything's going to be different in a couple of years when you pick up a book and you read it and you're like, Twitter, really? Who uses that anymore? So I've got different generations in the book, and you've got like the Gen Xers are using Facebook more. And then you've got the millennials that are using Twitter more. And then as the books go by, there's going to be people going, man, you use Twitter? Everything's on TikTok these days. So yeah, things are going to change.
Yeah, we've had conversations at the store about like, are we going to have to figure out how to learn how to use TikTok for the Murder by the Book? It's like, no, like I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. Like I already do the Twitter, and I already do Instagram, and I already do Facebook. If I could all do those really well, like I cannot figure out another one.
Yeah, apparently book TikTok is a big thing right now, and I've got all these friends that are saying, "Oh, you got to do it! You got to do it!" And it's like I can't learn another platform this week.
My social media book story is, so I actually got my job at Murder by the Book because of Twitter. I had started, so before I was at Murder by the Book, I've been there for 10 years. I was a general manager at one of the border stores in the area, and it started just going to a lot of the book events at the store, and got to know McKenna and David and everybody at the store really well. And so after like one big event, I got home and I had like direct message from Twitter, and it was McKenna, the store owner. And she was like, "Hey, if you ever think about leaving Borders, give me a call." And I was like, "Let me get my bookstore through inventory. And as soon as that's done, like we are going to talk." So, she asked me a couple more questions about what I like to read. At that point, I wasn't reading quite nearly as many mysteries as I read now, and kind of realized that I actually did, because I was reading a lot of urban fantasy stuff. So she realized that I actually did have some kind of mystery chops too. And then like within 2 weeks, I was working at Murder by the Book because of this direct message that I got on Twitter. So
Wow.
that's
great.
my social media story.
I
So
found my agent on Twitter
really,
because I was querying, and one of the people that I'd queried had put out some kind of message, "Hey, I'm all caught up. If I haven't talked to you, then obviously I'm not interested."
Mhm.
And I kind of thought that was rude, because if I wasn't on Twitter, I would never have known. And that same day, my dream agent post, "Man, I hate it when people do this." And I was like, okay, we have a love match. So that's actually what got the conversation started there. And it turned out like 6 months later that the agent who posted, if I haven't heard from you, don't worry about it. I don't care. She sends me a direct message. "I think it's really rude that you're publishing a book and didn't give me a chance to rep it." Yeah, okay, we're good.
Wow.
sorry, I'm watching my cat do something very precarious in the background. Like he
I'm
never does this. I don't understand what's happening back here. Oh my gosh. One of the things I kind of love about when people talk about technology in books, I've been binge reading the Leslie Meyer Lucy Stone series, and I don't know, she's on like book 25 or something now. But so she started writing them in like 1991. And in like the fourth or fifth book in the series, she's a newspaper reporter, and like she's starting to discover like there's this thing called email. And oh my gosh, there's this like scene in this book where like her kids are online and they're on like MySpace, and she's like they're explaining to her what MySpace is, and then she discovers that like there's porn on the internet, and there's this whole chapter about like her like realizing that her kids could potentially be seeing this on the internet. And it was really charming in the most like weirdly dated way. It was like I just love being able to see like you had like this exact like moment where you like knew like when these books were taking place. And like there's one of them that happens like 2 months after 9/11, and it was really interesting to see kind of how the series had progressed technologically, like through just the things that she would mention in them.
Yeah, I have a similar experience when I'm reading the books. If someone's out in danger, I
Mhm.
always think, why aren't they calling? Why aren't they making a phone call?
When we watched a couple of years ago, we watched Scream with my nephew who was like 17, and he was like, in the first one, he's like, "Wait, people didn't have cell phones? Like, why is she answering her house phone?" I'm like, "Yeah, no, we didn't have cell phones." It's so crazy. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of cozies in general. We'll start with Dorothy. Can you tell us kind of what you said in the bio? We said that you write kind of both romance and mysteries. What drew you to cozy mysteries specifically?
The Cat Who mysteries.
Oh.
You remember those? I read them as a teenager, and I just loved them. And that just got me hooked into the whole genre. My whole family, we would pass the books around. We'd all read them, and it's just so charming, and I love figuring out the puzzle and having always, the bad guy's going to get caught, and you just know that's going to happen. That's such a satisfying feeling that when I sat down to write first, when I quit my job to write full time, without knowing how to write, I started out writing cozy mysteries and went to romance. And then I had an editor say, you have a very cozy mystery voice. So she actually brought me back around full circle back to the cozy mysteries. And I was so happy to get back to what I actually quit my job to write.
Yeah. And how about you, Olivia?
I love how fun they are, and I love how quirky they are, and the humor in it. At one point, I was writing urban fantasy. That was what I thought I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And every time I talked to somebody about my urban fantasy, I mean, these were like dark, gritty, bloody things, right? And everybody was like, "Are you a comedian? Do you write comedy?" No, this is serious. This is life or death. And they're like, "Yeah, you write comedy." So I started writing comedy, and it's a much better fit for me. And I like it. I like that you've got a puzzle that you can solve. And I have people that are saying, "Oh, I figured out who the killer was on page 0. This is boring." And I've had people go, "I couldn't figure it out at all." And I've got a lot of people in like the 75% to like 90%, like DMing me going, "Wait a second, it's blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "I'm not going to tell you, but man, you figured it out."
Yeah. So when you read, Olivia, are you, as you're reading mysteries, are you the type of reader that is trying to figure it out while you're going, or are you just along for the ride and you want to be surprised?
I am always trying to figure out the mechanics of who done it.
Mhm.
And even whenever I was a little kid, I was going through the library, I was checking out every single Agatha Christie I could find, and I was trying to figure out who done it. And Agatha Christie drove me crazy because it was some random neighbor that you never saw in the books. And, oh yeah, he killed him. There was no way to figure it out. So once I started reading mysteries that you could figure it out, I really, really enjoyed that. And like the Nancy Drews and everything, they had enough clues that you could figure it out if you paid enough attention. And I loved it.
How about you, Dorothy?
Yeah, I like to try to figure it out. I've been writing for so long, it's hard to remember, because I read with a writer's brain, so I'm trying to figure out what clues are they laying down, what are their techniques, and trying to figure out what's going on behind the scenes. I'm pretty good at figuring out nowadays, because that character that they're trying to make look innocent
Mhm.
is usually the guilty one. And so then I'm trying not to do that in my books. If I can figure it out in a book, I'm try not to do that in my own.
I feel like I should be a lot better at figuring it out than I am for having read mysteries now as long as I have. But I'm always like, every time I think I've got it, I'm always wrong all the time.
But that's good though.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun.
Yeah, I want to be wrong. And I wanted wonder. I love the books where I'm just, what's going on? If I'm saying that halfway through the book, what's going on? That's what I enjoy.
Yeah.
So Olivia, Allie says that she wants an urban fantasy book starring Odessa immediately.
Whoa,
Allie, I will get that right to you, sweetheart.
So is urban fantasy something that have you given up trying it, or is it something that you potentially want to try again at some point?
It's something that I've shelved right now. And I still read a lot of urban fantasy. In fact, right now I'm right in the middle of one, and it's something that I love. But Odessa is so fun to write for that as long as they let me keep writing Odessa, I'll keep writing.
So when you started Killer Content, did you have a series in mind? And so if so, do you have kind of an arc for the character, or are you just kind of going from book to book?
I actually have the next 4 books counting I've got No Memes of Escape. It's coming out on October 5th. And that's the second book in the series. So that one's pretty much already in the can. Edits are even almost completely done on that one. And then I've got the next 3 books completely outlined.
Wow.
I kind of do too much homework, I guess. I'm a nerd. Hello. As if you can't tell from all the comic books behind me. So I know where I want the series to go. And I know some major plot points that I want to hit. And there's a couple of bits in the stories that I just can't wait to get to write that.
And how about you, Dorothy? When you were starting this new series, did you have kind of a character arc, or are you going from book to book for it?
I'm kind of going book to book. I know the stories. This one I don't have a character arc. I usually do. This one I'm still figuring her out. she's got some hidden depths in there that I'm still trying to figure out. I have plotted for 4 more books, and well, book 2's already written. That comes out in the fall. And then I'm writing book 3 now, and I have an idea for book 4 that I think would be really fun if they buy it.
And so, are you still doing romance as well, or are you just concentrating on mysteries now?
I'm trying to concentrate just on mysteries right now. I finally told myself, pick a genre already and stick with it. I'm going to try to do that for a while.
So we've got some great crowd questions coming in. So Drew Ann is watching, and I'm going to give my, again, plug for Drew Ann. Like, if you guys do not know her website, you definitely need to check it out. She has really great cover reveals and new releases and all kinds of stuff. So if you want to know anything about cozies or just kind of the mystery world in general, you definitely need to check out her thing. She's been joining us for all of our events lately, and we appreciate it. So she's got some great questions that she has popped up. So let's start with Olivia for this one. What's the hardest section for you to write? The beginning, the middle, or the end of the book?
I am a complete plotter. I write out extensive notes for everything before I ever sit down and open up a new Word doc. So for me, once I have my notes in place, I know where the next step is going to be. And before I learned how to plot, the middle was the hard part because it would just drag on and on and on. I didn't know how to get out of it. But now that I use extensive notes, I don't really have a problem with the middle anymore. The one thing I do is I always leave the last chapter until I've completely drafted the book and I've read through it a couple of times, and then I will write the last chapter because I want to make sure that everything is tied up with a nice, pretty little bow. So I guess maybe the end would be the most difficult.
And then, so second half of that question, do you know who your killer is when you start the book?
I have to because I want to be able to lay out enough clues that you can figure it out. I don't want to cheat and not give you that. And I don't want to not throw enough red herrings in your way. And it's so funny because a lot of people are finding red herrings that I didn't put there on purpose. And that cracks me up. I have this wonderful writers group. Thank you, Berkeley. I know y'all are here. So they all came to the same conclusion who the killer was. And I was like, that wasn't even on purpose. Come on, y'all, give me a break. So it's, you have to know, for me, because I think I would kind of panic if I got to 75% and I didn't know yet.
And so how about you, Dorothy? What's the hardest part for you, beginning, middle, or end?
Definitely the beginning. Even though I plot, it's just to get the words right, to find where do I start. Don't go too far back, don't go too far forward. Sometimes it takes me as long to write the beginning as it takes to write the rest of the book. But that said, when I hit the 3/4 mark, everything seems to fall apart. It's happened every time I've done it, so I don't panic as much as I used to. But I have a crisis there, and I always have to work through it, usually by working on the beginning again. And once I get that, then I can push through and get the ending.
And so do you know who your killer is when you start?
I always know who the killer is when I start, because I have pre-plotted. However, that doesn't always stay the killer. So my books sometimes change, and sometimes in weird and troubling ways, which is why I have that crisis at 3/4.
So that was going to be my next question was then, so if you've got everything plotted out, what do you do when your characters throw you a curveball that you're not sure of?
Dorothy, you want to take this?
I go with it. I follow them. If something comes out of their mouth, or I'll write a sentence happens where it says, and then they did this, and it's not in my plot, I'll follow it. like a squirrel following, there's a nut over there. And so,
How about you?
and then I just have to then take a couple of days and replot, usually.
Yeah. And how about you, Olivia?
So I've never met a character that behaves, ever. They don't do what I want them to do. And it's part of trying to work and give them each a voice and each a personality. They go off in their own little directions. And every once in a while you learn something interesting that you weren't thinking about before. And it's really fun when you're on book 2 or you're working on book 3 and you realize that something that you set in motion in book 1 now comes into play here. And that's usually when it really throws me for a curve, is when I do realize I set this up and I wasn't trying to.
So Dorothy, George wants to know, he says, you said that you read with a writer's mind. Do you feel that takes away anything from just the pure enjoyment of a great read?
Maybe. Because every once in a while I'll read something that's so good that it makes you feel kind of bad that I'm not that good, But yeah, ever since I started writing, I read, if I'm enjoying something, I will stop reading automatically and say, okay, what did the author just do? I want to know. If I start to cry, I'll stop myself and say, what just happened here? Why am I crying? How did they set that up? So it does interrupt it a little bit, but it's kind of more fun.
Yeah. So do you read in the genre, outside of the genre? What do you read when you're reading for pleasure?
I read lots of cozy mysteries, lots of fantasy, romance, nonfiction, the gamut. I really do enjoy, though, romance and cozy mysteries the most. So that's what I read the most. Someone once told me, well, I can't read what I write because then I might accidentally write it. I'm not sure. And my answer to that was, if I couldn't read what I enjoy, I wouldn't write it anymore.
How about you, Olivia? You mentioned that you're reading some urban fantasy now, but are you kind of across the board as well?
So I read anything, sci-fi, romance, urban fantasy. I love mysteries. I love thrillers. I love cozies. And this year particularly, I know that Berkeley's got an amazing 2021, 2022 lineup that's coming out. And I'm starting to get to know a lot of these authors like Dorothy. And I have been getting a chance to read a lot of ARCs, the advanced reader copies. And so my Kindle right now is full of some amazing books, and some of them aren't going to come out for 6 months. And there are these books in here that I know are going to just blow open the door of a lot of bookstores. And I'm really looking forward to them because I've read them and I know how good they are. And it just kind of gets me excited because I know that publishing is really going in a good direction right now. And there's new stories coming out.
Yeah. So one of the downsides of getting ARCs is you get to read something 6 or 8 months before everybody else, and you just want to shout about it from the rooftops, but like nobody can get it. And by the time it comes out, you're still excited about it, but you're like, oh, wow, I read that like a year ago. We have, Dean James, who writes for Berkeley under the name Miranda James, who does the Cat and the Stacks series. So he actually used to be the manager at Murder by the Book. He lives in Mississippi now, but he was our store manager for years. But Dorothy, he said like when he's writing cozies, he can't read them. So what he does is he'll read like nonfiction or he'll read historical stuff. And then kind of his reward for once he turns in his manuscript is then he gets to go back and read all of the cozies that he missed while he was working on his.
Okay, that's a good plan.
So Olivia, Drew Ann wants to know whether Olivia will travel outside of Williamsburg.
So right now, Odessa's going to stay pretty much in New York City. So she'll travel outside of Williamsburg and outside of Brooklyn. In fact, in book 2, she finally gets to hit Staten Island, which has a soft spot in my heart. I lived in Staten Island for a while, lived in Manhattan for a while. So I'm able to bring in some of the places that I really enjoy. But for now, I think keeping her in the city is kind of part of, I don't know, it's almost part of the genre, because the neighborhood that you're in or the town that you're in becomes a character in a cozy mystery. And if I were to leave Williamsburg and go home to Piney Island or something, it would kind of knock her off her game.
Yeah.
So I want to stay in New York.
So this is a two-part question. So Alicia says, do you have a trick to keeping your clues balanced, not too easy to guess the killer, but not out of nowhere? And somebody else also asked, Elizabeth asked, how many red herrings are too many red herrings? So let's start with Dorothy. How do you keep track of clues, and how do you know like whether you've given enough or not enough?
Well, I do keep a notebook, and I have a form that I write down each red herring. And I don't like to have more than 3 or 4. I think once you have more than 4, that maybe is too many. Just like you shouldn't have too many subplots, which I sometimes do. And then I will make a list of clues and keep that list and make sure that I include those clues as I'm writing. And if I accidentally include a new clue or a new red herring, I'll have to write that into my notebook. Yeah.
And how about you, Olivia?
So I write in Word, and I love the comment feature. As I'm writing, every once in a while things will just stand out to me, and I highlight it and I add a comment, and it usually says clue ? Red herring ? And I'm writing little notes to myself, and at the end I want to make sure that I've closed all of those loops, but I also, hey, I was going to make so and so look a lot more guilty than I did. Did it work? Did they look guilty enough? And I use those little comments all the time to kind of keep track of where I'm at.
Yeah. And so where does your editor come in that process? Do they ever say like, hey, maybe you need to have more of a clue here, or too few clues here? How does that work?
I've never had them do that.
No. Yeah.
So my editor is fabulous. She's really good at saying, hey, maybe we need to move this scene up a little bit higher and put a little bit of buffer between these two scenes because you get too much information here. And there was one time that she was like, oh, this would be a great red herring. I really want this person to look really guilty. And I'm reading it and I'm shaking my head, and like 3 pages later, she's like, they're guilty, aren't they? Yeah, well,
That's awesome. So CJ mentioned that he just joined late. I want to say, if any of you guys have joined late, don't worry. Once we are done with the chat, Facebook and YouTube will archive the videos. Sometimes YouTube takes a little bit longer just because it has to process the video, but the whole thing will be available for rewatching as soon as we're done. So if you missed any part of it, you will be able to rewatch. Where'd you go? Eliza Jane Frazier, which is that, Eliza, are you the author of, I think we're gonna get, there we go, there's my answer. I was like,
That's
I recognize
Eliza.
that name.
I love her.
So her book, If I Disappear, just came out at the end of January from Berkeley. And if you go back through the store's YouTube and Facebook accounts, you will be able to watch our chat with her. She chatted with Stephanie Roble like maybe a week or 2 ago. So those are all available to go back and to watch. So she wants to know, what is your favorite part of being a published author? Let's start with Olivia.
So I would think it was seeing it in a store, seeing my book in a store. And Eliza is actually one of the people who has sent me pictures of my book in the store. And I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Just the fact that I've got total strangers reading my book, and some of them are leaving me comments either on Twitter or on Insta, or, leaving, I know we're not supposed to read reviews, so I don't read them, obviously, but there's something really special about knowing that other people are reading something that I really love and something I put my whole heart into, and that they're enjoying these characters. And like Allie earlier, oh, I want an urban fantasy with Odessa. So just to know that these characters are as interesting to other people as they are to me, I love that.
And how about you, Dorothy?
Well, I have on my cork board near my computer, it says, enjoy the doing, not the done. However, as a published author, I really do enjoy going to like bookstore events, and whenever I'm driving there, I say, this is the cherry on top, getting to go out and talk to people and meet people. And especially since I've been writing since full-time since 2001, getting out of the house. and just talking, meeting all these people, meeting other authors, meeting people who love books. That is just lovely. I love doing that. I love talking about books. And if anybody's ever interested in writing or talking their favorite books, I'm there. I can talk for hours on that. That and dogs or cats.
And one of the great things about cozy readers is they're so voracious. Like, if they've read one, like they want more. It's so great. And like they're so willing to be like, oh, if you like this series, I like this one. There are so many series that I've tried just because customers have come in and said, hey, oh, you recommended this to me. Have you read this one? So yeah, that's like I said earlier, that's like one of the tricky things about us not being open right now. So we also have where'd she go? So Mia Manansala is joining us as well. So I also am super excited. So her book is coming out in May. And
May the 4th, Star Wars Day.
Yeah. And that is Arsenic and Adobo, so we're going to be chatting with her and Jen McKinley and Terry Morin Farley in May. So if you guys are watching, definitely come back for that. We're super excited about that one too. It's so great to see so many other authors and other Berkeley authors are popping in and watching too. I just saw another question. Favorite part about being published author we covered. Let's talk a little bit about path to publication. Dorothy, can you tell us a little bit about how you got your first book published?
Sure. Well, like I said, I quit my job and didn't know how to write. I knew how to write like government grants, and I was very good at that, but I didn't develop my voice. So it took a couple of years before I actually wrote my first book that sold, and that was The Marriage List. And people have told me, and it really is true, it's easier to publish a book than to get an agent. At least for me, it was a lot easier. And so I was a member of Romance Writers of America, and they would publish who are new hires at the different publishing houses. And I would query the new hires because I knew they'd have an empty plate. And finally, one of them bought the book, The Marriage List, which is a Regency romance. And I started writing romances. And then one of my editors, she liked my voice, and she was looking for someone to write cozies. And so she invited me to write up a proposal for the White House Gardener mystery series that I published with Berkeley Prime Crime. And that's how I got back into Berkeley Prime Crime, still no agent. And then I took some time off to have my daughter. She's 7 years old right now. And when I was ready to go back to writing books, she was about 2.5. I finally landed an agent. It just took me forever. And then that, I feel like now my career's going, I am glad to have an agent, and maybe I worked a little harder to get an agent this time around than I did the last time.
So Olivia, you told us a little bit about yours being able to find your agent on Twitter. Anything else to add?
Just that I feel really lucky to be working with the people that I'm working with, because my editor has such a fantastic eye. She finds really good books and she finds new books, and she takes chances on debut authors like me that are, my cozies are a little unconventional. For Odessa, she's a little bit younger than your average cozy main character. They're normally in their 30s or better, and she's 23 at the start of Killer Content. And I'm able to set a cozy in New York City where normally they would be in a smaller town. So I love that my editor is willing to take a chance on a unconventional book. And I love seeing some of the cozies that are coming out. You mentioned Mia's on the chat. She's got a millennial main character, and she's just outside of Chicago, and she's Filipino American, and it's the recipes aren't taco night or meatloaf. There are these delicious recipes that are different and unusual in the market. And the fact that Berkley especially is going out of its way to look for something that's new and to look for something that's fresh is fantastic.
Yeah, I also wanted to send out a big shout out to Deshay over at Berkeley. She's the publicist that we work with on a lot of cozy stuff, and she's really fantastic to help us get this set up. So yeah, we love the gang at Berkeley, and it's really nice to see in the last couple of years that that cozies are starting to get younger readers as well. That people are starting to embrace it, and I know that, you know, for a while, like sometimes people would look at them and they would see like the cats on the cover and stuff and think, oh, those are too light and those are too fluffy. But like, it's been really great to be able to introduce people to them and realize that yes, they are on the lighter side, but that doesn't necessarily mean fluffy, or that they still have a lot of heart and a lot of character to them, and then they still have things to say. Like one of my favorites is Ellie Alexander's Bake Shop Mysteries, and one of the things I love about it is the way that she writes her main character who lost her father when she was young. Like, she writes about grief in such a beautiful way that you wouldn't necessarily expect to find in a book that's got cupcakes on the cover, but you pick them up and they have these just like these wonderful little surprises in them. So that's I'm such a big fan of cozies. Like I said, I'm so happy that kind of younger people are starting to find them as well. We've got another question from CJ. Wants to know, is there an environment that makes writing easier, like ambient noise? Do you need silence? Do you have a special drink? You know, is a cat purring next to you just enough to get the juices running? Let's start with Dorothy.
Well, when I was writing the chocolate shop mysteries, I always had to start out eating chocolate.
Oh no.
And I kind of have followed on with that. Well, lately I've just been writing in the house
Yeah.
with everyone else in the house. So I've been locked in my bedroom, not even in my office because my office doesn't have a door. Yeah, I like to write at home when it's quiet, but I also get a lot of once a week back in the day. I would get together at Panera Bread with several writers, and we would just sit and write for one day a week, all day, and we would brainstorm with each other. And I seriously miss that because I think that's the best way to do it. You know, writing is, you're always alone, and to come together and write with other people is just wonderful.
And how about you, Olivia?
So I get distracted very easily. And if there are other things going on, you know, somebody playing video games or dog barking or whatever, I forget what I'm doing and I go pay attention to that. So what I do is I come up with a playlist that's usually like 20 to 30 songs, and they have a certain mood or something about them feels like whatever book I'm reading or writing. And I will play that playlist over and over until I can't hear it anymore. It just becomes background noise. And it's great because I can shut down my laptop in the middle of a sentence. 2 weeks later, turn on that playlist, and I know what the rest of that sentence is. So it's in my head, and it puts me right into the headspace. blocks out the rest of the world. And I know a lot of people are like, how can you listen to music with lyrics? Aren't you just typing out the lyrics? I don't hear it anymore. And I don't have to hear anything else that's going on either, because I've got these huge headphones on, and boom, that becomes my world.
So Lynn asks, when you're writing, when you're writing a cozy specifically, do you start with character, or do you start with plot? Let's start.
For me, it's all about character. The plot is how the character interacts with the world. But I love my characters. I do everything character driven.
I'm kind of the opposite. I start with a situation, but then that's only for the first book in the series, because then the rest of the books, your characters are there, and then you're thinking, how do I put them in a situation where something interesting is going to happen to them? I always, even though I always start with a situation, an idea for a book, like the Beloved Bookroom ones series, my idea was the bookless, library was the idea, and what would a librarian do? And then I had to find a character that would work well. And I always want to make sure that character is someone who's very interesting. So if I'm writing 10 books in that series, I have somewhere to go. I don't want to be bored with that character.
I don't think you're going to get bored with True. True is a fun character. I really love reading her. I hope you have lots more.
So before we head out, you guys have both mentioned it already that you've got other ones coming out, but can you just recap for everybody? Dorothy, so what do you have coming out next?
So I have A Perfect Bind, and that is the next book in the series. And True is back. There's someone breaking into her secret book room, and she can't really report it to the police because no one knows that it's supposed to know that it's there. It's kind of like an open secret. And so she has to figure out what's going on her own. That comes out in the fall of this year.
Awesome. And then, so how about you, Olivia? What's next after Killer Content?
So book number 2 is called No Memes of Escape, and it comes out in October. I giggle every time I say it too. And it takes place in an escape room in Williamsburg. And in the escape room, there's 6 players. One of them ends up dead. So you've got 5 suspects. And I love the concept of you've got a very limited pool of suspects, and you're looking into every bit of their motivation. And a lot of victims and cozies almost kind of deserved it. They just turn out to be bad people. And so as it goes on, you learn more and more that the victim really is a nasty person. I don't know if they deserved to be killed or what, but it's fun to be able to reveal it. And they leave the escape room. They wander around Williamsburg. They, like I said, they visit Staten Island. But all of the mystery takes place in this locked escape room. And that was fun.
So I lied. I do have one more question after that, and kind of a 2-part thing. So let's talk real briefly about titles and potentially covers. So how did you guys come up with titles, and did you have any input in your covers? Let's start with Dorothy.
You just want to come up with something that's kind of a pun that works with the story. For the broken spine, broken spine in the book, but it could also be a broken spine in person. And so for this series, I just want it to be book oriented, but also kind of a twist on titles. I'm not sure if the publisher is going to let me keep the title for the third book is Book Club to Death.
Wow.
Which I like. They keep calling it book number 3.
That's a bad sign.
And with the covers, they do ask us for input, and so I would send in I've sent pictures before, descriptions, like The cat in the story has a skull on his head. Of course, my main character, Trude, never sees it, but everybody else does. Has a skull on his head. So I was like, can you make sure there's a skull somewhere on that cat? They really couldn't get it on the head, so they put it a little bit lower on the neck. So they'll do that. And in the marketing department and the art department are great at coming up with ideas too.
And how about you, Olivia?
So Killer Content originally had a different name, and I was kind of bummed out when everybody was like, yeah, we got to work with this, and we started throwing ideas around, and my agent was actually the one who said, Killer Content sounds good, and we all went, that's it, that's the name. And I'm very, very glad that I didn't go with my original title, because the viral video is such a central part of the book that I wanted to have something viral in the name. And after 2020, I never want to hear the word viral again. So I am so glad that my agent and my editor talked me out of that. So I'm very happy. And as far as the covers go, so I got to get one of the illustrated covers, which I'm so excited about, because it's new to have a cozy get an illustrated cover. And I have a graphics art designer named Rose Blake, who did my cover, and she did the cover for book 2, No Means of Escape. I can't show it to you yet, but I can tell you it's amazing. There's so many things that are very cleverly disguised in just the cover of that. But I love the colors, and I love the bold everything of the illustrated covers. It doesn't look like a traditional cozy, but I don't exactly write the traditional cozy, so it kind of fits with the whole theme.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining us this evening. So just to recap, if anybody has joined us late, like I said, you will be able to rewatch the video from the beginning, either on Facebook or YouTube. We have been chatting with Olivia Blacke, whose newest book and first book, Killer Content, has just come out. And we've also been chatting with Dorothy St. James, whose new book, The Broken Spine, which is also the first in her new series, has both come out. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out and joining us this evening. I hope you guys will all come back tomorrow night when we chat with Valerie Wilson-Wesley and Angela M. Sanders. We're super excited about that one too. Dorothy and Olivia, it was so great to meet you virtually. Hopefully at some point, the world will right itself and we'll be able to get you to Houston and do this in person. But thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Bye.